This is Jessica Williamson with new Filmmakers Los Angeles, and we're here at Camrich Los Angeles showroom in West Hollywood, and we're going to chat with Kim Farrant today about her new film, Between Me. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So you are originally from Melbourne. Is that where Between Me was shot?
Yes.
It was, okay. And if you wouldn't mind for our audience just giving a brief synopsis of the film?
So Between Me is about three survivors of childhood sexual abuse who are navigating the ramifications of that in their adult lives and relationships.
Why did you decide to do a film about sexual abuse?
So I wanted to make a film that dealt with sexual abuse in the lives of adults, and not because I think it's very hard to depict sexual abuse on screen as childhood abuse, because it's very confronting for people. A lot of people don't want to see films about children being molested. But, you know, in Australia, and I'm not sure what the stats are in America, but in Australia, 1 in 4 women are sexually abused or assaulted, and 1 in 5 men. So if you look around, you're sitting in a cafe, that's, you know, a quarter of your audience in the cafe has been abused. So a lot of people walk around dealing with these issues, but mostly it's not spoken about. And I found that for myself, having experienced childhood sexual abuse, that it had a lot of ramifications in my adult life, to do with things like, you know, simply being in an intimate relationship over the years had proven difficult at times. My relationship to my own body, my trust in men, my ability to be open and intimate, and sometimes I would experience flashbacks during sex. So all of these things, you know, for some women and men, it can lead to eating disorders and addictions, and also re-victimization, where they put themselves in dangerous positions, they don't have sexual boundaries, you know, just basic lack of self-worth. So I just felt compelled, like, I have to talk about this, because mostly we don't talk about it in society. And I know how much it affected me, and through talking about it, especially in one particular relationship I had with a man, a very beautiful man, it gave me the key, which was, if you speak the truth of the unspeakable, then healing can happen.
Going to some of the relationships in the film, you staged it all within this 12-step meeting. When you were writing it, what was the process like of interweaving all those stories together? Because there's a lot in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that a challenge?
So the writing process was an interesting one, and it's going to sound like I'm deviating, but I'm going to come back. So I had experienced in making previous films and exploring, so I make documentaries and drama, that I got a lot of people wanting to censor, you know, these intense issues that I was addressing. And so to avoid any censorship, I decided to go for no government funding, which in Australia a lot of the funding is through the government, and I decided to involve no other producers, right?
Wow.
So that I had total authorship of the film. And so I did a possible crowdfunding campaign, and I raised $30,000 just from people, friends, strangers. So I wanted to be able to freely speak my truth without anyone censoring or editing my script. So in that way, we, as a group, we discussed lots of stories. Primarily, the stories come from different aspects of my life and my childhood and people in my life. You know, primarily the experiences that I had had, and some of them are slightly fictionalized, but, you know, it's pretty much just part of my own history, and then it's splintering off different aspects of myself that had started to manifest in different behaviors. And so then they became characters within themselves. And then I also borrowed someone from my childhood.
Interesting. I understand you also worked with the actors in a group setting during the writing process. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So we inspired by an acting coach that I'd worked with, Susan Batson, who works in New York. She's very much like a truth warrior, you know, and she encourages actors and directors to very much speak their truth. And I'd done a workshop with her, and so 2 weeks later I was like, right, I'm forming a group, and I'm going to call it Truth Group, and I'm going to invite actors that I believe have the courage and willingness to speak their truth through their art and through their performances. And so they all came and we met, and everyone was kind of told what it would entail, and it was going to be rigorous, and it was 8 months every Sunday without fail for 12 hours. And, you know, we'd always start with meditation, which was led by a lovely man called Stefan Markworth. And then we would do anything from craft acting exercises to dance to singing to, we did a lot of childhood games to trigger stuff. We would write essays about emotional blocks that we had in our lives, and then we would read them out, and we had to read them out and own them. We had to own the words. So if you weren't like actually being present to what you were saying, you could feel it in the room, and so you'd start again, and you'd have to really like delve down so that there was no censor to all the unspeakable parts, all the parts in ourselves that we detest and we hate and we hide and we avoid and we deny, that run our lives. And so the idea was, let's move through as many of those blocks as possible so that when you're acting and you're on set, be it with me or be it with another director or on stage or whatever, that you are aware of your blocks so that you can work with them to move through them. You can access the parts of yourself which you deem completely unlovable and give them to the world. So that was the purpose, and then through that we kind of devised this script, which I wrote.
So an interesting thing last night when we screened it is I noticed some people in the audience were laughing. What are some of the responses that you've gotten, and how would you explain that?
So last night was the first time, New Filmmakers Festival was the world premiere of...
Fantastic.
No, that's not true. Sorry, New Filmmakers Festival was the first time I've seen it. The world premiere was at Cannes, but I wasn't there for that screening. So this was the first time I'd seen the film with an audience. So it was so unusual for me because there's only like probably 3 funny moments in the film, and yet there were a lot more laughs. And I was watching it and I was like, oh, okay, they're really uncomfortable. This is discomfort laughter. And so it was kind of endearing realizing how affected the audience were, that they were laughing at things that were actually really heavy and serious and awkward, and you know, to actually be in a room, like admitting, one of the characters says, you know, he's a chronic masturbator and fantasy addict. That's pretty heavy shit to, you know, if your life is run by masturbation and chronic fantasy and addiction to porn. For that person, that's a truckload of shame that they're walking around with. But yet that got a laugh. And I think it got a laugh because, you know, so many people are addicted to sex, and especially to porn, and they find it, you know, deeply painful to coexist with that. So yeah, I think it was an awkward laugh.
It was,
Yeah.
But you know, I think the work that you're doing is hugely important, and I take my hat off to you. What's next for the future?
So I just screened my first feature film, which premiered at Sundance Film Festival.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and that's called Strangerland, and it's with Nicole Kidman and Joseph Fiennes and Hugo Weaving and some incredible Australian actors as well. And that will be released in the States in July, and premieres at the Sydney Film Festival in Australia. So,
Fantastic.
And then I've just moved to LA. I'm developing a couple of TV series and a feature, and reading a lot of scripts, and, you know, pitching on things, and so yeah.
Great. Well, the future looks bright, and we can't wait to see what else comes out. Yes, thank you
Cool.
very much,
Thank
Kim.
you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.